Alright, well howdy folks. Welcome back to Kdogs Movies. This time I'm going to do kind of a collection video because particularly these are films I would like to briefly talk about because it is Easter weekend. It is specifically the day I'm recording this is Good Friday. We're about to have our Good Friday services for the evening. And I myself am going to be in one. That's why I'm sporting the beard and all that. But I thought I would get out my entire collection of biblical epics. Now, these are biblical epics. You know, there's a ton of Christian movies out there. There's a ton of, and also faith-based movies. You know, you could look at the stuff that Pure Flix Entertainment has put out. There's also the stuff that Lionsgate is putting out. Matter of fact, they're coming out with a brand new one. I think it's called the Jesus Revolution. And it's all about the period between in the late 60s, early 70s, known as the Jesus movement, and it was a big cultural thing, and that's why we kind of now have contemporary Christian music. But that's a different story, and there's tons of movies that are faith-based and Christian movies, but these specifically I'm going to talk about are actually stories that are adapted straight from the Bible. These movies and TV shows that I'm going to talk about, yes, we now have TV shows. There was a period in the Hollywood cinema when the big blockbusters that you went to see were all adaptations of biblical stories. And there was a handful of directors that were doing this at the time. Particularly Cecil B. Demille was one of the most well-known ones doing that, because he had made his biblical epics go back towards the silent era, and that's how long the biblical epics go. It goes back to the days of the silent era, mostly what I'm going to talk about today is the biblical epics with the sound, but you'll see what I have here, and it's going to be, I'm just going to briefly give my opinions of these movies because they vary in quality, and unfortunately not all of them are really classics, but a lot of them are just an entertaining watch. Now, I don't have, like I said, I don't have every single biblical epic known to man, because there's quite a few of them that I don't think have ever been released yet to DVD or video, and some of them got really, really bad. Some I would not even classify them as biblical epics. And I'll name two of them specifically because there's a reason why the biblical epics stopped, because it eventually became where it was starting to be blasphemous a little bit, and or parody. The two films that specifically I am going to mention are Life of Brian, which was produced by the Monty Python group. Monty Python comedy, from England, and that was considered to be a very blasphemous film, even though they I don't think they really set out to destroy or make fun of Christianity, but they just, I don't know entirely what the whole ordeal was behind that film. And the other one is The Last Temptation of Christ. Now, a lot of people praise that film for its filmmaking, but the story behind it and the novelization was very, very blasphemous at the time. It was banned from the Catholic Church, actually, and so and those and when the film came out, it got massive amounts of protests from evangelical Christians about how blasphemous it was. Now, I am not judging you if you like the film or you've seen the film, but I myself will not have that in my collection just based on that. But I'm sure it's a great filmed movie and well acted, but yeah, who knows, maybe one day I will check it out, but as of right now I will not own it because it's just too touchy of a subject, because it's very personal to me, how you portray Christ on film. Now, well, let's get into this. I've only got so much time to talk here because I need to eventually go get ready. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the specific classic, what I would call classic biblical epics that are in my collection. And this first one is one I will always buy, whatever format it comes out. Double dip, I own several VHS copies, several DVD copies, and Blu-ray copies. I'm not going to get the big box set out, but I'm just going to show up Cecil B. DeMille's 1956 classic, The Ten Commandments. Yeah, and it's still considered one of the greatest epics of all time. This is the 4K, the new 4K release that came out about a year or so ago, and thanks to Paramount Pictures. And I'm trying to think. I'm looking real quickly here. I don't see it, but the big box set has the 1923 silent version that Cecil B. DeMille did when he was a younger man, but he decided to remake the Ten Commandments in 1956 because he thought that the silent film, and you really watch it, it doesn't work, because the silent film, like half of the film is half of the film is the story of Moses, and the other half of the story is like a modern day man who abuses the actual Ten Commandments and is not on the straight and narrow. But yeah, so Cecil B. DeMille remade it in 1956, and it quickly became one of the staple of biblical epics, just film epics in general. You know, Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner, Ann Baxter, John Derrick, Deborah Paget is in this film. Vincent Price is in this film. And yeah, it's just it's my second favorite film of all time, and I still watch this movie. Matter of fact, this film still gets played on television every year on ABC, because also this week is Passover. So the reason why we celebrate Passover, well, it's when the plague of death passed over the Hebrew children. And yeah, so it's part of this story. So that's why you always see the Ten Commandments played at Easter, not just because it's a biblical story, because it's actually Passover. You know, of course the Jews are really celebrating Passover, as well as Christians as well. So, yeah, the Ten Commandments. And also by Cecil B. DeMille, and this one isn't talked about as much, but this one he made just before he made The Greatest Show on Earth, which was the film he won the Academy Award for. He made this film, Samson and Delilah, with Hedy Lamarr, Victor Mature, George Sanders, Angela Lansbury, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Another staple here amongst the biblical epics is the 1953 film The Robe, starring Richard Burton, Victor Mature, Michael Rennie, and Gene Simmons. This was the first movie to be released in what was called, I'm trying to think how to describe it. This was the first movie to be released in CinemaScope. Now, CinemaScope is kind of a standard amongst, somewhat of a standard amongst the cinema going. It's really, really wide. It's really, really widescreen. But however, CinemaScope was a little bit wider than the 2:3:5 ratio that we're so used to seeing in the movie theater. This one actually has a ratio of 2.55:1. So it's a little bit wider, but yeah, this was the classic story, classic film, and introduced widescreen to the film-going public, and plus gave a very powerful story. Some of it may be a little tongue-in-cheek there, a little cheesy, but this was big. This was a big movie for its day, and it's still an enjoyable film. I still enjoy it. Of course, back in that time, this is a fictitious story based on the story in the Bible, okay? So whenever Christ is portrayed in this film, because back in those days, you did not want to have an actor portray Christ, or if an actor was portraying Christ, they never took credit. And of course, in The Robe, you do not necessarily see Christ. You see parts like a hand, or like a hand, or at the foot of the cross, you see his feet, and you hear a voice off screen saying, "Father, forgive them." That's about all that you see. And of course, it was kind of considered taboo at the time if you had an actor portray Christ. But then, as you'll see with this next one, they kind of got away from that. This is from 1961. This one's kind of forgotten about because this isn't really one of the best ones. It was, I don't know if it was necessarily a flop, but it was kind of following in the footsteps of Ben Hur, and it's released by MGM. It was released by MGM. Now it's Warner Brothers that owns the rights because it's part of the Ted Turner catalog. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's King of Kings. And this one was directed by Nicholas Ray, famous from Rebel Without a Cause. The film stars Jeffrey Hunter as Jesus. Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of people here. Harry Gardino, Rip Torn, playing a disciple. Yeah, just a whole slew of people in here, and it's worth a check out. But yeah, King of Kings. Then in 1965, filmmaker George Stevens decided to produce a film about Christ. Another film. This is an epic too, and it's one of my personal favorites. It wasn't well regarded when it came out. It was kind of it kind of flopped at the box office because I don't know if people just thought it was kind of goofy and corny. Some people may think that way, but it had an enormous budget at the time, $20 million in 1965. That's a big budget for a movie. And there's a whole cast of characters, or a whole cast of people that's like an all-star cast, literally. And it's George Stevenson's The Greatest Story Ever Told. In this film, you have Max von Sydow play Jesus, and he's joined by Michael Anderson Jr., Carol Baker, Pat Boone, Richard Conte, Jose Ferrer, Van Heflin, Charlton Heston, Martin Landau, Angela Lansbury, Janet Margolin, David McCallum, Roddy McDowell, Dorothy McGuire, Sal Mineo, Nehemiah Persoff, Donald Pleasance, Sidney Poitier, Claude Rains, and Gary Raymond, and also Telly Savalas and Shelley Winters, John Wayne, Ed Wynn. Yeah, that's all in this movie, but a lot of them were credited, but were given credited, but really they're more like cameos. Because Angela Lansbury does not have a single word of dialogue in this film. She plays Pontius Pilate's wife, because Telly Savalas is playing Pontius Pilate, and Angela Lansbury plays Claudia, his wife. All she does is kind of, all she does is peek her head around the corner, look, and go walk back up the stairs. That's it. And John Wayne, he's just on for a brief lightning flash and says, "Truly this man was the Son of God." That's it. Okay, the next one is from 20th Century Fox, directed by John Huston. It's simply called The Bible in the Beginning. It's not a bad movie. They had to change the title and later releases from because originally it was just called The Bible. They had to change it to The Bible in the Beginning, because originally Dino De Laurentiis, who was the producer of this film, wanted to do a full film series reenacting the whole Bible. And only telling the first 22 chapters in the book of Genesis, even that you have a film that is nearly 3 hours long. The budget was a humongous budget. I'm not sure what the budget was. And it took 4 years of production. So quickly you see where that is going. So, but it's a decent film. Let's see who's in it. This one's got a whole bunch of a cast of like an all-star cast as well. Michael Parks, Ula Birdred, Richard Harris, John Huston himself, Stephen Boyd, George C. Scott, Ava Gardner, Peter O'Toole. Yeah, that's about it. And George C. Scott plays Abraham. John Huston plays Noah. And Richard Harris plays, I think he plays Cain. Peter O'Toole plays an angel of God. And Michael Parks plays Adam. And Ula Birdred plays Eve. Okay. Next one, and this is completing out the classics. You have 1959's Ben Hur. And this is another one that's a crowning jewel of this period, because it was a movie that saved the studio at the time. It was it won the most Academy Awards at the time. There's now a 3-way tie between this film, Titanic, and Yeah, Titanic and The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. And yeah, classic story. Charlton Heston playing Ben Hur, Jack Hawkins, Stephen Boyd, Martha Scott, who also played his mother in the Ten Commandments. Produced by Sam Zimbalist and directed by William Wyler. And this, of course, is my old DVD version, which I kept. I have it on Blu-ray, but it's also with the Ten Commandments. Yeah, so yeah, this is a classic film. I did manage to see the Ten Commandments and Ben Hur both in the theater as part of those Fathom events that TCM was hosting. Classic movies, and of course it was around Easter time, so they played Ben Hur in the movie theater. And the conclusion I come out with those films, seeing the Ten Commandments and Ben Hur on the big screen, that is the way that they were supposed to be seen. They were not meant to be seen on your TV. You know, I am guilty as charged of owning DVDs and Blu-ray copies of those movies, but those movies were meant to be seen on the big screen. They were epics. And when you watch it on the television screen, it kind of takes everything away from that. So definitely Ben Hur and the Ten Commandments. If you get a chance to see them on the big screen, go see them. You won't believe what you're missing out on TV. Trust me. Now, the next two films I want to talk about are from the 70s and 80s. Early 80s, actually. Excuse me. And the first film, and here's another thing. These films that I'm going to talk about were not necessarily big budget films by any stretch. As a matter of fact, the budget was quite limiting because one of the things, like I mentioned before, specifically with the Bible and the greatest story ever told, is that the budgets were getting higher and higher and higher, and what they were taking in the box office was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So the studios were losing money. That's why, essentially, that's one of the reasons why essentially biblical epics went away, because they were getting too expensive. The other reason being that they were getting blasphemous, not only getting blasphemous, but they were also getting too expensive. But in these cases, you have the Gospel Road, which is the biblical story of Jesus told and sung by Johnny Cash. And it was filmed in the Holy Land in Israel. The director, Robert Elfstrom, portrays Jesus in the film. And Larry Lee as John the Baptist and Paul Smith as Simon Peter. June Carter plays Mary Magdalene. As you can see, not very well-known people necessarily, but they are telling the story of Jesus. And it's all set to the music of Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, and June Carter. Larry Gatlin and the Gatlin brothers contribute some music to it. But yeah, as you can see, and it's a very well done movie considering the fact that it's very, very low budget. And they did film it in the Holy Land, so they went to the actual places where Jesus walked. But it's yeah, it's a cheap made movie. And as well as this one, and this one keeps getting re-released. There's a little bit of controversy about this film because I guess the actor who plays Jesus in this film, Brian Deacon, is a strong atheist, I guess. But this film was made back in 1980. The film was just simply called Jesus. Now this edition is called Jesus Fact or Fiction, but it's a very interactive DVD, but it has the film in this movie. The film was originally released by Warner Brothers in 1980, 79, 80, and they still distribute this film in various editions. It's been seen all over the world. The people who actually own the rights is Inspirational Films. So, yeah, it was not financed by Warner Brothers. It was just distributed by Warner Brothers. So, yeah. And then in the 1990s, we got this. And this is from DreamWorks Animation. It was one of their first films, one of their first animated films. It's probably DreamWorks at the time was competing with Disney, being the fact that it was Jeffrey Katzenberg, who formerly worked at Disney, who helped start up DreamWorks, and so he started up their animation studio. And for a while they did hand-drawn animated films while also doing their CGI films. But this is The Prince of Egypt from 1998. Yeah, and you have, again, an all-star cast portraying the voices. You have Val Kilmer, unfortunately, who cannot speak anymore, being the voice of Moses. Ray Fiennes is the voice of Ramses. Patrick Stewart is the old Pharaoh. Michelle Pfeiffer plays Moses' wife. And you have, what's her name? Sandra Bullock. Jeff Goldblum is in it. Steve Martin, Martin Short. Yeah, Danny Glover. Yeah, just all contributing their voices to the animated epic Prince of Egypt. And unfortunately, this one hasn't received as well as credit, even though it's a really well-made film. Basically, if it's kind of like if Disney told the story of Moses, but it was obviously DreamWorks, but yeah. Okay, next up are the most modern films. Now, definitely here, you could really criticize these movies from just by their quality. Some of them are really good. Some of them are horrible. And so we have the 2016 remake of Ben Hur, which really got criticized and was not very well received. And this, of course, was produced by Mark Burnett and Roma Downey, and we'll get into some further projects that they have done. And but yeah, this was kind of the last of their run of telling biblical stories. We have The Gospel of John. This is a really well-made film. It's word for word from the Good News translation. This came out around the same time The Passion of the Christ did, but it didn't receive the controversy or what's the word? Or the publicity that that film did. But yeah, Henry Ian Cusack is Jesus in this film. Christopher Plummer is narrating the film. Then we have The Nativity Story, all about the birth of Jesus. A really well-made film, and it kind of capitalized on the success that The Passion of the Christ did. And matter of fact, some of the same people were behind the scenes on this. Paul, Apostle of Christ, with Olivier Martinez and Jim Caviezel in this film. Really well-made film. And then we have Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ. Jim Caviezel playing Jesus. And Monica Bellucci's in here playing Mary Magdalene. Directed by Mel Gibson. One of the most controversial films ever made. Still really well made film, beautifully shot film, but yeah, it got a lot of controversy at the time because accusing of being anti-Semitic, and yeah, and of course Mel Gibson. Next up is from Generation Entertainment. It's One Night with the King, starring Peter O'Toole, Tiffany DuPont, Luke Goss, and Omar Sharif. This film tells the story of Esther, and it's actually produced by TBN Networks, you know, the Christian channel. Generation Entertainment, which is a brand of their ministry. Next up is Risen. Joseph Fiennes, all about the Roman soldiers who discover the risen Christ. This one's fairly well made too. And we got Pureflix Entertainment's Samson. You know, the story of Samson and Delilah. And of course it's got some well-known cast in there too. And Mark Burnett and Roma Downey's produced Son of God, which is a derivative of their mini-series, The Bible. Basically, they took the story of Jesus and put it into a 2.5 hour feature film. And then we got The Young Messiah. This one was produced by Chris Columbus, you know, the guy behind Home Alone and, the director of Home Alone and Harry Potter. They decided to tell the story of Jesus as a young boy. Now, these two here are complete garbage in terms of their movie. Exodus of Gods and Kings, telling the story of Moses, with Christian Bale as Moses. Terrible film. Completely goes against text, as well as what's his name? Darren Aronofsky's Noah with Russell Crowe. Terrible film. You don't let atheists make biblical films. They took God out of Noah. I mean, yeah, it's just, he's referred to as the creator. Bad. Horrible. Now, real quick, because I'm running out of battery and I'm kind of stretched for time here. Now we're going to get into TV shows and miniseries. We have Franco Zepharelli's Jesus of Nazareth, which aired on television here in the United States in 1977 on NBC, with an all-star cast: Anne Bancroft, Ernest Borgnine, James Earl Jones, Stacy Keach, James Mason, Ian McShane, Sir Laurence Olivier, Donald Pleasance, Christopher Plummer, Anthony Quinn, Rod Steiger, Peter Ustinov, Michael York, and Olivia Hussey. And then we have Roma Downey and Mark Burnett's The Bible, the Epic miniseries, which aired on the History Channel. It was the most successful miniseries that aired on that channel. And it's a massive, massive miniseries with narration by, I get them mixed up because there's, who is it? Keith David. There's Keith David and there's David Keith, and one's black, one's white. It's Keith David, the black actor. And then we have the NBC miniseries that Roma Downey and Mark Burnett also produced, called A.D. The Bible Continues, which is basically everything after Christ rose and ascended to heaven, and the start of the church. So yeah, here we go. Now, in recent years, VidAngel Studios, along with Dallas Jenkins, whose father is Jerry B. Jenkins, who wrote the Left Behind series. He had an idea after his wife was binge watching some TV show, and he wondered why isn't there a show about Jesus that we could binge watch? So here's season 1 and season 2 of The Chosen. And a lot of craft and attention to detail has gone into this show. I wouldn't say it's a big budget show, but the quality is top notch. The performances are really well done and puts it into a modern storytelling narrative that we can follow. And I think they're currently working on season 3. So yeah, The Chosen. And of course, this show is only available on DVD and Blu-ray. It's also available on the streaming service VidAngel. It's now called Angel Studios. But yeah, and you can stream The Chosen. So there we go. There is the biblical epics currently that I own. And I specifically wanted to bring these up and talk about them in various degrees. And as you can see, these two, definitely avoid them. The rest, check them out. So, from me to you, see you later. And happy Easter, everybody.